Well, now it's time for us to try out what we've learned about forms and put it into our website project. Our survey page here has some elements that we can make into a form to find out what our users think about coffee. I'll open it up in the browser, and as you can see, we've got everything just dropped into a big block, so we've got some formatting to do. Let's open it up inside of our text editor, and down here we can see all the information that we want to gather. I'll start out at the top just by setting our heading in an H1 tag. And then we can go down and set up our form below. First we need a form tag, and that'll need action and method attributes. For our action, since we're not publishing this on a real server, I'll just use a fake address again. And I'm assuming we have a coffee survey PHP script file on our server when our site goes live. For the method, I'll use post since we're not dealing with any secure information. And just about everything on our page is going to be part of this form. So I'll go down just above the footer and set the close form tag. Now we can look at the elements that we've got and see what kind of inputs we'll need. For name, we'll just need a normal text input. So I'll set up the tag for that. We'll set the type to text. And we'll set the name to name. Looking over the rest of the questions, we'll only need a couple of them required, but I want to make sure that each one of my users gives me at least a name and an email. So I'll set this one required, and we'll do that for email too. Next, let's set up the email address. This is also going to use an input tag, but this time we'll set the type to email. And that way the field will be verified as a correct email address before the form is sent. We'll set the name equal to email, and we'll also set this one to be required. An email input is a great place to use a placeholder, so we can give instructions and tell the user what they need to do. And then we can finish off that tag as well. Next, you can see we've got a few multiple choice questions. On the top one, we want either a yes or no answer, so that sounds like a good use for radio buttons. I'll go right before the responses, and we'll add another input tag. This time set the type to radio. We'll give it a name of grind. And since my user won't be entering an answer here, we'll make sure we set the value to yes, so we know which answer they chose. I'll finish off that tag, and we're going to need one almost like it for the no answer. So I'll just copy it and paste it. And we'll want to leave the same type and name, but change the value to no. For our next question, we probably want to use checkboxes, since some of our users might want to select both answers. It's going to be very similar to our radio, so I'll start by pasting that in here before the response. Of course, we need to change the type to checkbox, and we'll change the name to drink, and also change the values to match the responses. For this one, I'll put sugar. And then we'll need another input just like it for cream down below, so I'll copy this and paste it, leaving the same type and name, and just changing the value to cream. Our last multiple choice question has a lot of answers, so this is a good place to use the select dropdown. I'll add the select tag right at the beginning of the list, and of course close it at the end. And let's make sure to set up our box with a name so that our data can be identified. I'll just set it to favorite. Now we need to set up the option tag for each one of our answers. And I'll just copy that and paste it in front of the others. And of course we'll need to close those tags as well. And lastly, to finish out our drop-down menu, each one of our options needs to have a value, so we know which one they selected. I'll use a blank value for the top one, since there's no real answer there. And let me set up a value for the rest of them so we can have something to change. For the rest of our values, I'll set up whatever the answer is, so each one is identifiable. Now that we've got our basic form set up, I'd like to do a little bit of grouping and then some styling. First of all, we can group the top two fields together, since that's the personal information, and then we can group the bottom three together, since that's the coffee drink information. So we'll start off with some field set tags. I'll start the first one out above the name label, and close it below the email address. And then we'll want another set here that starts above the preparation methods and ends down at the bottom underneath the drop-down. Next, I'll set up legends for each one. We'll use the legend tag, and inside of it we'll just add a title. The top one will be personal information, and I'll just copy that and paste it into the second field set, and we'll just change the title here to Your Coffee Preferences. Now, I almost forgot, we've got another question in here that just asks our users to describe their own coffee preparation methods. This is a great place for a text area, and that way they can type as much as they want. So we'll set up a text area tag to start it, and we'll give it a name. I'll use preparation for that. And since I don't want anything in the box to start with, I'll simply close the tag right away. Now we're probably going to need some styling, but let's save what we've got so far and see how it looks in the browser. I'll refresh the page, and now we can see our form is here. The only problem is everything's all lined up one after another. So the first thing I'll do is simply set up a few line breaks to stack things up. I'll go back over to our document, and I'll start by adding one right after the Your Name label. And then I'll just copy that so that I can place them wherever I want. Basically, I'd like everything to stack up. So I'm going to put a line break after each label, and also after each input element. There we've got the personal information set up, and now I'll go down to the rest of the elements. There's two for the text area. We'll add one after the question for the radio buttons, and each radio button response. And do the same thing for the checkboxes. I'll add an extra one in after the radio button and the checkbox, just to make sure we have enough room to separate the questions apart. And now let's see what it looks like. I'll save my change. We'll go back over to our page and refresh. And now I've got a little bit better stacking of my form. I can see I probably need one here between the question and the drop-down box. And I'll add a little bit more space underneath the coffee preparation methods as well. So we'll paste one more line break here, and an extra line break underneath the text area. We'll do one more refresh, and that looks a little bit more readable. Now there's a couple of other things I'd like to do. For instance, the default box here for my text area is a little bit small, and so are my name and address fields. So let's go make a couple of changes to those. First of all, for the name and email address fields, we can use an attribute called size to make the box a little bit bigger. Size is very specific for a text field. What we're going to do here for measurement is we're going to enter the number of characters we'd like our users to be able to type. And I'll just set both equal to 40. We'll add that attribute to both input fields. And then let's move down to the text area. A text area also uses attributes to set the size, but it uses two different ones. First of all, instead of size, we'll use cols, short for columns. I'll set that equal to 40 as well, so it'll match the other two fields that we've set up. And then, in order to determine the number of lines we want to have inside the field, we use the rows attribute. And I'll set that to 6. And that should give our users enough space to type what they want. Now we'll save those two changes and see how our form looks. And now the sizes look pretty good for our users to be able to fill out their coffee preferences. Well, now that our form is set up, the last thing I'd like to do is just make the page layout look a little bit more interesting. We've got a lot of white space over here, and back in our images folder, we have this picture called Espresso JPEG that we haven't used yet. So let's set it up in an aside tag, and that'll fill up some of the area. So let me go back to our document, and we'll go up to the top here before the form. And first, I'll add in a set of side tags. Inside there, we'll add a figure tag set. And here we can add in our image tag. We'll set the source, and the file is in the images folder with the other ones. We'll use a slash to open that folder, and then the file name is espresso.jpg. And for our screen readers, I'll set up an alt attribute, and just set that equal to a description of the image. Now we can save our change, and when I refresh the page, you can see that our aside is set up. Remember, we already built styles to push the aside over to the right-hand side of the page and add in a background for it. So now our page has a little bit of balance to it. Well, now that we've seen how to add a form to our website, in the next